Brother Ron, and welcome to We All Be News Radio and TV, the news-free Dixie for the 21st century.
Good evening, boys and girls, scholars and laymen. Welcome to another wonderful, entertaining, edutating edition of The Art of It Stinks. Is We All Be News Free Dixie Zone. And I'm excited and honored to be able to bring you a special broadcast tonight. We are going to honor the memory of the martyrs known as John Brown and Frederick Hampton Sr. I always call December Martyrs Month. As you know, December is when they celebrate one of the biggest martyrs to ever live, allegedly. I'm just kidding. Jesus Christ. His birthday, of course, is Christmas, December 25th. We also have some other people that we have evidence of actually existing. I'm just joking. People like John Brown, who passed away or was killed by the state on December 2nd, 1859, down in Charlestown, what is now known as West Virginia. And also December 4th, 1969, 50 years ago, we lost a bright, shining light, a true black prince on the way of becoming a king, the one and only Fred Hampton Sr. On December 4th, 1969. He was also assassinated by the state while he was sleeping next to his pregnant fiancee, then known at that time as Sister Deborah Johnson. So I have received email from people asking if, or emails, or rather I have received actually one email about a couple weeks ago from a longtime listener who wanted to know if I was going to do anything to honor Fred Hampton's memory on the 50th anniversary of his crucifixion, of his assassination. Him and Defense Captain Mark Clark lost their lives very, very young, just in their early 20s. And a lot of times people don't remember Mark Clark like they should, but it is what it is and how it happens sometimes. Same that, John Brown, he had a bunch of people that, lost their lives in the Harper's Ferry raid, including two of his sons. See, that would make John Brown so interesting is the fact that his whole family was involved in trying to liberate black people. And he lost three sons in the process. He had four sons that participated in the Harper's Ferry raid back on October 16th, 1859. He lost two of them. Watson Brown actually was shot trying to surrender. Like he had a white flag. He was approaching the enemy with a white flag. You got to remember, the U.S. Marines were called in to take on John Brown at Harper's Ferry. The U.S. Marines, which were led by Israel Green and also Robert E. Lee. And Stonewall Jackson was also a part of that effort. All three of these guys would betray the United States. They would turn traitors and join the Confederate cause during the American Civil War, which is interesting because like a lot of people that betrayed America normally are trained by America. December 7th, for example, December 7th will mark the anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack, which led the United States involvement into World War II. But what a lot of people don't really know, which should be more common fact, was that the guy who was the mastermind behind Pearl Harbor, Admiral Yamamoto. Who trained Yamamoto? The United States trained Yamamoto. He went to Harvard University. He also was trained in how to fly airplanes in America. So the guy who masterminded Pearl Harbor, Admiral Yamamoto, was a product of America. Just like with bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was a product of the CIA. He was trained and equipped by the CIA to take on the Russians in Afghanistan back in the 1980s. Look at a movie starring Tom Hanks called Charlie Wilson's War. I'm just trying to get y'all hip to what's going on. Charlie Wilson's War. It talks about this Texas politician. I believe he was a representative in Congress. He wanted to get involved in policies over in the Middle East. He helped get the funding to support Osama bin Laden and the other folks who end up, going against the Russians back in the 80s in Afghanistan. So this is stuff that y'all need to know. They just came out with a new movie about I think of the Battle of Midway and Pearl Harbor stuff that just came out with that. Never trust a movie to give you historically accurate information. Do the research. Take the time to do your own research. Don't even listen to people like me and just take what I say as the gospel truth. Do your research. But getting back to John Brown, right? So you had the folks that end up, bringing him into so-called Just Us, who actually end up betraying the country just less than 2 years later with the American Civil War. It's Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, Israel Green. And also the people that was there at his execution included those people as well as Walt Whitman, the poet laureate of America, the great poet Walt Whitman witnessed the assassination, execution, crucifixion of John Brown, and also John Wilkes Booth, who was several years later killed the President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. So you had some notable people who were some game changers, who was empowered witnesses as well as participants in the capture of John Brown. Like I said, he lost two sons in Harper's Ferry. Oliver Brown, poor lad, he suffered for almost a day. They didn't have a lot of medical advances back then, so he was just suffering. I mean, he died a brutal death. With his brother Watson, it seemed like it was a quick death for him. And actually, his body was donated to science to the Winchester Medical College, and it was reclaimed, I guess, after the Civil War and gave back to the family of John Brown to be reburied with proper honor. But the thing about it is, yeah, Oliver suffered a crucial death. John Brown lost three sons in all for the fight for the liberation of black people. That should be duly noted. John Brown not only put himself in the line of fire for black people, but also he put his family in the line of fire for black people. John Brown was married twice. He had 20 children in all. 10 of them made it to adulthood. 8 survived him. Like I say, he lost 2 of his sons at Harper's Ferry. So they died before him. So this man been through a lot of hardship, 20 kids, uh, lost half of them in childhood, lost 2 of them before he died, doing Harper's Ferry. And then, and 5 of his surviving children actually had descendants. So John Brown was a very prolific man when it came to love making, to marriage. He was married twice. His first wife died after giving childbirth. Both the child and the mother died, right behind each other. So John Brown had a lot of hardship in his life. Well, a lot of people don't know John Brown's father was in the tannery business, leather goods and stuff like that. He actually trained Ulysses S. Grant father in the tanning. He was a U.S. Grant, the future commander of the Union forces that won the Civil War, the future president of the United States. His father was an apprentice to John Brown's father in the tannery business. So there's all these connections, right? All these unique connections with John Brown and his ties to the upcoming Civil War. Really, John Brown was the blood sacrifice to make the Civil War happen. From my understanding, you had people behind the scenes who wanted to free John Brown, to free John Brown out of bondage, out of his captivity while he was awaiting his execution day. He refused to be freed, from my understanding. He wanted to die a martyr's death. And his last words, to paraphrase his last words, he knew that the only way to purge the country of its original sin was to have it bloodshed, lots and lots of bloodshed, a bloody civil war. So his death really ignited what became known as the American Civil War, the war between the states, according to the Southerners, the war of northern aggression, all that other stuff. But we should look all this stuff up. I also want to encourage, because Baba Dick Gregory really was a huge, huge, huge fan of John Brown. He would make pilgrimage to Harper's Ferry, to Charlestown, West Virginia, to pay homage to, in his opinion, the greatest American who ever lived. And I had a chance back in 2014 to go to the National Park Service's Harper's Ferry situation in West Virginia. West Virginia is a very beautiful state. It's a very beautiful ride, to go to Harper's Ferry. It's beautiful. I mean, it's very scenic, very majestic. And I had a chance to talk to some of the park rangers. I talked to one Sister Kim Biggs, excuse me. You can see her interview on the We All Be TV YouTube channel. But she talked about how Dick Gregory would come up there on a regular basis over the years and really partake into the park and really, pay homage. It's like a pilgrimage to him to pay homage to John Brown. So I had a chance to go on that journey myself to pay homage to John Brown and Harper's Ferry to visit and take in John Brown's fort, the place where he made his stand against the federal government, and U.S. arsenal known as Harper's Ferry, the John Brown Fort. Actually, it's interesting to note that John Brown was like a great hero to Black people in the 19th century. Like Harriet Tubman had great respect for John Brown. She was going to participate, from my understanding, in Harper's Ferry, but got sick. But she said, like, basically what she said was John Brown dying one death is worth 100 men dying, or it's better than 100 men dying, because John Brown had so much sincerity and authenticity in wanting to do the right thing. I mean, he was very religious. He was a Bible thumper. I don't see nothing wrong with that, but he knew that slavery was morally wrong, even though it was legally uh, endorsed. And like he said in his trial, I mean, during that time when he was on trial, he had intervened in affairs for people who were a part of what we now know as the 1%, the elites. He would be held as a hero, not as a turncoat, not as a traitor, not as a villain. If he had, intervened on the affairs of the wealthy and the elites, he'll be held as a hero. But because he represented the downtrodden and the oppressed, he wanted to fight on their behalf. He's a villain. And whoever controls their checkbook, they control the narrative. You understand? So it's interesting to note that a lot of movies about John Brown. You had a John Brown movie that starred Ronald Reagan and Errol Flynn that I saw back in the day. But a lot of the movies about John Brown paint him as a monster, as a villain, as a psycho, as deranged, as possessed, as a fanatic. And to be honest with you, to do great things in this world, you got to be an extremist. You just can't be average and you want to do something that's going to make an impact. I always tell people now, you want to be famous, you either be really, really good at something or really, really bad at something. But you can't be mediocre. You got to be really, really good at it or really, really bad at it. And John Brown was a guy. He was not no military strategist. He was not no general, but he answered the call, and he was willing to die. Like Dr. King said, a man ain't willing to die for something he ain't fit to live. And John Brown found a cause that he was willing to die for. And Frederick Douglass, the great Frederick Douglass, said it best. He said, I could live for the slave, but John Brown could die for the slave. Even Frederick Douglass didn't want to put his life on the line for the slave. He said John Brown can fight and die for the slave. He said, I could speak and live for the slave, but John Brown can fight and die for the slave. And it what made John Brown so unique. His commitment, his unrelenting commitment to making sure that this evil is slayed, this evil of slavery is slayed once and for all. His moral conviction. He had a strong individual moral compass. A lot of us don't have a moral compass. Dr. King talked about how before he died, it looked like we were integrated into a burning house, that we lost our way. But he said, let us be like firemen, stay in the house and put it out. And that's what we made a mistake. See, we confuse integration with assimilation, but that's another lecture, that's another video, that's another topic altogether. But John Brown had a lot of clarity about the mission at hand, about what needed to be done, about the sacrifices that were to come because of this commitment. So that should never be forgotten about. John Brown at one point was a household name in Black America. Now, today he's not really talked about like he should be, to my understanding, because you wait for Hollywood, you wait for the miseducation system, you wait for society to tell you who your heroes are and who you should talk about and who you should praise and worship, and all this other stuff. But you got to take it upon yourself, my fellow traveler in this world, to seek your own way, to create your own path, to have your own understanding, to have a better understanding of who you are and your relationship with the world, and also have an inner understanding of who you are and your relationship with yourself. So just dropping John Brown out there. He should be talked about. They just talked about Rosa Parks getting that statue unveiled on the anniversary of the Montgomery bus boycott, December 1st, and rightfully so. She deserved her praise. And Rosa Parks is another one they put this narrative on you to think that she was soft and non-violent, and all this stuff. And her folks were Garveyites. They were big fans of Marcus Garvey, her grandfather. She believed in armed self-defense. She believed that black folks should fight for themselves. Rosa Parks was involved in the investigation on behalf of the NAACP of the rape of one Reese Taylor, the Ancestor now, the beautiful Ancestor now. She just passed recently. Almost, she would have been, I want to say she would have been 100 years old this year in 2019. She just passed a couple years back. They got a documentary out called The Rape of Reese Taylor. Is highly recommended. And what happened to Reese Taylor was that she was coming home from church with her best friend and her friend's son, and she was kidnapped by a truckload full of white men, about 6 white men, if I'm not mistaken. They took her out in the woods and they gang raped her. They messed her up so bad that she could no longer have kids. They destroyed her womb. They just destroyed this woman. And they were caught by the authorities one night. Everybody knew who did it because they had they looked into it. I think they had a grand jury convene a couple times, had a couple of things happen. They knew who the guys were. Even some of the guys who were involved in the raping of this sister, in the violation of this sister, they confessed to the crime, but they were never charged. It never went to trial. So it was a big outrage. This is back in September of 44 when this happened. I want to say September 6, 1944, but I'm sure y'all wait for me to make a mistake in my dates and times and all the names. Y'all gonna Google it up and tell me otherwise. But I think it was September 6, 1944, when Sister Taylor was raped outside Montgomery, Alabama. It was in the state of Alabama, and Rosa Parks was called to investigate that. She did investigative work into what happened to Reese Taylor, and it became a big national outcry. People were rallying around what happened to Reese Taylor. This is back in 44. This is like 11 years before the Montgomery bus boycott. This is before Emmett Till. This whole decade before. So you fast forward to December 1st, but I'll also let you know that it was known that the Montgomery bus drivers as well as police were known for raping black women. So you had people in positions of authority and power violating black women's bodies and minds and souls and spirits. So this is not talked about, because when the Montgomery bus boycott happened, you had the black family united. See, black power is unity and solidarity. White power, as it relates to the system, is divide and conquer. So you had the black family coming together. The Montgomery bus boycott was one of the greatest achievements of the American Civil Rights Movement that's not really talked about like it should have been. It's a very powerful moment in our history that's not celebrated like it should be celebrated. There's a lot of things to that, but you had black men, veterans, World War II veterans, Korean veterans coming home. When the bus boycott happened, they made sure the sisters were protected. They were guarding the sisters, driving, acting like, jitney cabs, whatever, carpooling. That bus boycott lasts, I believe, for how many days? 381 days? It was like a year and some change, right? Y'all can look that up. I think it's 381 days or whatever. Y'all tell me, and this is what I like to do. I'm gonna throw some stuff out there. Like I said, I might get you in the right zip code. Might not always be the right house, but it'll be the right zip code. So y'all tell me how long that bus boycott lasts. Was it 381 days, 281 days, something like that? But you had no incident of any black woman being violated, reported by a person in authority, like a white cop or a white bus driver. So the black men were stepping up and doing their job, protecting the sisters. So we are at our strongest when we know how to work together, when we, respect and recognize the masculinity of the man, when we respect and recognize the femininity of the women. That's when we are our strongest, and we come together as the yin and the yang. So, yeah, John Brown was a phenomenal person. So they had that statue unveiled on December 1st of 2019 of this year in Montgomery. But what people don't know, a lot of people don't know that the first John Brown statue in the entire country was created by black people. Black folks raised the money to create and erect the first John Brown statue in America. And it still stands. It's over 100 years old. It was dedicated back in June of 1911 in what is now known as Kansas City, Kansas. We used to be known in the area, used to be known as Quindaro. It was a free town. It was like one of them towns. It was a major stop on the Underground Railroad. Old timers told me that, when the slave catchers and the bounty hunters and the slave owners would come to town, try to get their property back, their runaway property, They'll be met with a welcome party gun ambush. You had black and white abolitionists as well as some Native Americans. They would shoot up the slave catchers and the bounty hunters and the slave owners and bury them in a mass grave, unmarked mass graves in the local cemetery. And the local cemetery still exists. So that's the story. And they didn't put that in the movie Harriet, right? If you make a John Brown biopic, there's gonna be a lot of white folks dying. You can't make a John Brown biopic without white people dying. They was able to make a Harriet movie without no white people dying, I think. But you can't make a John Brown movie without white folks dying, especially in Kansas. They call it bleeding Kansas. Them Jayhawkers, the Kansas Jayhawks, we did get their name from Jayhawking. So John Brown was definitely gangster about his, by any means necessary. Like Malcolm said, he'll probably been the only white person who's been allowed to join his organization, the Organization of Afro-American Unity. When he was asked that question, he said maybe John Brown could join us if he was still alive. So there's the type of respect John Brown had in the black community at one point in this country. And it's been kind of forgotten about because people have been so soft and telling the history, or they don't really know the history to begin with, and they depend on Hollywood to tell them, oh, this is your hero, this is who you should follow, this is who you should respect. And like I said, John Brown was painted as a villain for the longest, and this is what y'all need to do. Anytime in American history or the media tell you that this person's a bad person, do your own research. Like, it's interesting because The Irishman just came out, the Irishman movie about the killing of Jimmy Hoffa, alleged by Frank Sheeran. I don't know, Frank Sheeran looking like the white version of Frank Lucas to me. And I'm going to do a review about that later on. But Jimmy Hoffa is normally painted as this monster, but he's a product of the system. And he used the system to empower people. He helped create a middle class from working class folks. He helped create some type of upward mobility for working class people. And he not was just doing it for white folks, he was doing it for black people. Black folks benefited from the Teamster stuff. The Teamsters pension, excuse me. Yes, they loaned money to the mob, but they got the money back with some money. So he wasn't necessarily robbing the Teamsters, but he was actually empowering his members, make sure they had a powerful pension fund. But that's another story. I'm not getting all that, but look up people like John Brown. I just mentioned Jimmy Hoffa, but also Walter Reuther. Walter Reuther is a unsung hero to me of the working class and middle class people of America. He was also a labor union leader, but he's not as well known or as talked about like Jimmy Hoffa is. But at one point, he was very well known, and he was a friend of the civil rights movement. He was a supporter and advocate of Dr. King. I believe he also participated, weighed in on the Memphis sanitation workers strike back in 1968, which helped get Dr. King killed. He was down here as well. But Walter Reuther basically put his life on the line. I believe his folks are from West Virginia, and John Brown did a raid, right? His folks were German ancestry, but they tried to kill him several times. Walter Reuther, him and his brothers, they tried to kill him several times. And Walter Reuther, back in April 1948, he almost got assassinated in his home. They shot him in his right arm, and it got broken to 150 pieces. He got 206 bones in the human body, and his right arm was basically shattered to 150 pieces. But he survived. He regained some usage of that arm, and he made it all the way up to May of 1970 when his plane went down in a fiery plane crash with his wife and bodyguard all aboard, got killed. And what's interesting is that, I think the National Transportation Safety Board said it was an accident, although the plane was missing major parts. It was missing parts, and also parts that supposed to be in certain places were not in the right place. So how is that an accident when your plane is missing parts and then parts are not in the right places? So they said it was an accident. I think it was an assassination. But who I know? But look up Walter Reuther. Look up Jimmy Hoffa. Look up John Brown. Look up Huey Long. Huey Long, the senator from Louisiana, the Kingfish, not Amos and Andy Kingfish, but the real Kingfish from Louisiana, who was a governor. Louisiana took on Standard Oil and big business, made them pay for bridges and roads and for school books for kids. He started an adult literacy program down in Louisiana because at one point Louisiana was one of the most illiterate states in the whole union, and he started an adult literacy program to help adults, no matter what your color was, to read. Huey P. Newton, who's from Louisiana, he's named after Huey Long because of what he was able to do to help poor people. get ahead. And Huey Long was not the type of politician. He's from the South. He was no George Wallace or no Favis up in what at Arkansas. He was none of that. He didn't play that race stuff. He was about empowering working class people. He wanted everybody to have a living wage. He had a thing called Share the Wealth program. That was his movement. This is back in the 30s. People always talking about the 60s as being like this revolutionary time. Really, it was 1930s. 1930s where everybody was really gangster and gully. Jimmy Hoffa came up in the 1930s. You know what I'm saying? He started at Kroger's. Unionizing the workers at Kroger's, right? And they're getting their heads bashed in. You had the bonus army, these World War One veterans who wanted their benefits that were not given to them after World War One. World War One ended in 1919. This is the 1930s. This is over a decade and some change. They still didn't get the benefits that were promised to them. So what people don't understand, you had the bonus army massacre up in D.C. that was led by General Douglas MacArthur. His assistants were Dwight D. Eisenhower and General George Patton. So the GI Bill did not come because of World War II. The GI Bill was reparations from for the veterans of World War One. So everything we get is bloodshed. Like I said, American history is a big gangster rap album or gangster rap song. So Huey Long, he was a threat. He was a Democrat, but he was a threat to Franklin Roosevelt New Deal and his re-election bids. They assassinated Huey Long down at the Baton Rouge Capitol. They said it was a doctor named Dr. Carl Weiss that killed him, but he might have got shot by his own bodyguards. They still got the bullet holes at the Capitol. He's buried at the Capitol, but really probably died like Dr. King in the hospital. Cause like my understanding from what I've been reading, that the wounds he got, he could have survived if it wasn't for just these doctors not doing their job, or maybe they did their job to kill him on the operating table. That was their job to do, to kill him, to silence him forever, to keep him from being a threat to Franklin Roosevelt and the other Democrats. But this guy had a radio program that was getting like 25 to 30 million listeners a week. He was getting all these tens of thousands of letters to his Senate office and Congress from around the country. This guy had a formidable movement. He also wrote a book that came out posthumously, I believe. I read the book. Talk about his first 100 days in the White House and how his cabinet will be a team of rivals, kind of like what that lady wrote, the historian wrote. I think Doris Goodwin Kearns or something like that. She wrote a book called Team of Rivals that came out when Obama first got elected, about Abraham Lincoln having a cabinet of his rivals, and they're working together for a more perfect union. So he also had that idea decades ago. He was ahead of the game to do that, but he was taken out by big business and stuff like that. He was a threat, but he was, Dr. King didn't start getting, in trouble until he started talking about sharing the wealth. So really, he was talking about redistribution of the wealth, like Huey Long was doing in the 30s, and that's what got Dr. King killed. When you start messing with public policy and with the money of these elites and these shadowy figures, that's get you killed, okay, quicker than anything. So there you go. Look up these guys. Stop letting these folks tell you that everybody's evil. Like Malcolm said, the media is the most powerful entity on the planet because it influences and controls the minds of the masses. But John Brown, that statue down in Kansas City is under attack, which is unfortunate. That statue been standing since 1911, but the last 2 years it's been attacked. People have been painting swastikas and everything on the statue. Just a week or so ago, the right hand on the statue was knocked off by somebody. Black folks raised the money for that statue to get made. It was made in Italy. They had a big ceremony back in June of 1911. Black folks raised $2,000 back in 1911 and be the equivalent to almost $55,000 in today's money, adjusted for inflation. This is a time in America where black folks getting lynched every day or day and a half in this country somewhere, and black folks' civil rights were under attack. You just got like a year or two later that Woodrow Wilson would resegregate D.C. and the government. Woodrow Wilson, black folks voted for Woodrow Wilson. They thought he was the next coming of Lincoln. I don't know how they did that because this guy endorsed his classmates Thomas Dixon book being turned into a movie called Birth of a Nation. He filmed them. He showed a screening of that movie at the White House. Thomas Dixon, the guy who wrote The Klansman, was a classmate of Woodrow Wilson. I believe that I want to say Johns Hopkins University. I'm not mistaken, but y'all gonna look that up too. Take a look; it's all online. So, a lot of the black leaders, including Du Bois and I believe Ida B. Wells and William Monroe Trotter, who would confront Woodrow Wilson at the White House. Y'all talking about Kanye West when he said George Bush doesn't care about black people thing back in the Katrina time. But you had William Monroe Trotter, who was the first black Phi Beta Kappa at Harvard, a brilliant mind, and the head editor and owner of the Guardian newspaper in Boston. He actually led a national crusade against the showing of the film Birth of a Nation in movie theaters in the Northeast as well as throughout the country. But he confronted Woodrow Wilson in the White House and basically called him a hypocrite to his face and basically got him blackballed. He confronted Woodrow Wilson and called him a hypocrite and they got him blackballed. So y'all don't even know who William Monroe Trotter was. Look him up. I'm just dropping names. It's not my job just to go into detail. I don't really think it's appreciated, but it is what it is. I just like, my thing is this. I have it on my heart to share some of these things. A lot of times I sit on a lot of stuff that I want to share, but time is of the essence. I'm got to go to work, clock in. Like I'm a regular guy, just like you all. And but yet to make me different than a lot of people, that I take the time to give back and to share what I know and to do things. And sometimes it's unsung. So yeah, William Monroe Trotter, check him out. Y'all thought I was going to talk about John Brown and Fred Hampton, but I'm just dropping these names. But yeah, the black folks raised the money for the first John Brown statue in the whole country. It's still standing, but it's under attack. I guess it's pushback from the removal of Confederate monuments and statues throughout the country over the last several years. Started, I guess, in 2015 after the shooting at Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina. Start, taking down statues, Confederate flags. But it's really a shame. It's really a shame that that statue is getting vandalized like that. It's horrible because black folks really love John Brown. They really took pride. Our ancestors knew who they were better than a lot of us do today. And I was just thankful that I went back there in August of 2016 in Kansas City, Kansas, back to that place because it was located on the campus of Western University. It was HBCU that led the fundraising campaign, and that statue was on its campus. Now that HBCU no longer exists. The building's been torn down. They went to financial troubles back in the 40s during World War II, and so they were closed, I believe, back in 1943. And the buildings that once were on the campus no longer exist, but that statue that they helped to lead the fundraising efforts for, it exists at what used to be a college campus. And I just hope the people of Kansas City and other people who are concerned about the preservation of this statue, because John Brown was on the right side of history, is the reason why they call the Confederate, history thing a lost cause, because they lost. So why should they have all the favor and flavor and the right to showcase their misguided heroes? Whereas this guy was a hero. He's a martyr. He died for what he really believed in. He died for a righteous cause. Yet the statue was being vandalized is uncalled for. They should have some type of protection on that statue. I mean, I think it's ridiculous. And I'm an artist, so you look at all this art, and I know and I appreciate things of beauty. But that statue, I'm so thankful that I had a chance to see it in its glory. Still, it was well made, and I'm glad I was able to, take the time to see it and witness it for myself and pay my homage to that. And I'm also glad I went to Harper's Ferry. I would tell black people, especially, I mean, black folks live in Maryland and DC, Virginia. I mean, it's right there. It's a beautiful drive. West Virginia is a beautiful state. You should check out the Harper's Ferry place. Cause also that was Du Bois and them went when they had the Niagara movement. Dr. Du Bois and them, they held John Brown in such high esteem that they went to Harper's Ferry to pay their respects when the Niagara movement happened. Just before the formation of the NACP, some people actually take off their shoes to walk around John Brown's fort. It was like a mecca. It was like a religious, holy experience. Since like this guy made a stand where he lost his sons. He lost two of his sons at Harper's Ferry. The guy, Dangerfield Newby, a black man, he's the basis, he's the inspiration for the character Django in Django Unchained. He was one of John Brown's black raiders. He had when they killed, he was the first person to die, a part of John Brown's group, I believe, because the first person to die at Harper's Ferry was actually a free black man who worked for the B&O Railroad, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. I think it was like a bag man, whatever, and they killed him. And it is what it is. But Dangerfield Newby was one of the first John Brown raiders to die, I believe. And on his person, they mutilated his body horribly. And on his person, they found a letter that he got from his wife who was in bondage. He was trying to free his wife. She was deep down south. He was trying to get the resources so he could come and free his wife and be with her. So he had a love letter from his wife on his person when he died. And that's the basis of Django. Django, in the movie, the plot is he's trying to go down south to get his wife and rescue her out of slavery. Let's tell the truth about our history, man. It's a shame that a white dude like Quentin Tarantino could do a better job of showcasing the horrors of slavery and all the stuff there. Our people can. We the descendants of folks like the Dred Scotts and the Harriet Tubmans and people like that. Yeah, we don't know the story like we should know, and that's another story. But yeah, they are defacing that statue of John Brown. I'm from Memphis, and we had the statue of Nathan Bedford Forrest up for a long, long time. And when towards the end, before they took it down, people were vandalizing the statue, but really they had a lot of police protection. They paid a lot of police overtime to protect that statue. That statue was also made in Italy. A equestrian statue of Nathan Bedford Forrest on his horse is facing south. It was made in Italy. I believe they put it up there back in 1904 or 1905. It's estimated to be worth around, I guess, $5 or $10 million now. But they got it in a storage. You know what I'm saying? It's not there exposed. I mean, that statue had a police protection around the clock. Had better protection than the president, as far as I'm concerned with that statue. So, yeah, it's interesting. Then, you know, talked about John Brown, right? Then I go to Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton is a hero of mine as well, too. Fred Hampton's interested folks from Haynesville, Louisiana. He was born in Maywood, Illinois, suburb of Chicago, August 30th, 1948. What a lot of people don't know about Fred Hampton is interesting that his mom from Louisiana, she just passed away a couple years ago, maybe I want to say 2016, had a chance to thank her on the phone personally for the sacrifice of her son. It was like one of the highlights of my life to be able to thank Fred Hampton's mom for raising such a strong, powerful, committed, and loving son who loved his people. And it was awesome to be able to thank her. And I talked to his brother as well. The brother interview, he passed away recently too. May he rest in peace and paradise with his family. I think Fred Hampton's sister, I think all his family, his immediate family has passed. His son is left. Fred Hampton Jr., who was born December 29th, just several weeks after his father was killed. He was in his mom's womb, and all that stuff. You could hear it in his voice, the trauma from being in that womb during that time period. It's a blessing he's still with us. He'll be 50 years young on December 29th, and his beautiful mom is still with us, and she's still committed. It was wonderful. Get a chance, check out her testimony at the assassination site, at the crucifixion site. That building that Fred Hampton and Mark Clark was killed at no longer exists. Gentrification is a form of genocide. But they get at this spot for years, and it was the 50th anniversary of the year. I wanted to make it there. I was there in spirit. I plan on making one of the anniversary commemorations very soon, and hopefully getting a chance to actually meet Fred Hampton Jr. and his wonderful mom in person, as well as some other people. But it was powerful to see her testimony about what happened that morning. It happened in the morning, on Thursday morning, early in the third. It was before 6 o'clock. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning, December 4th, 1969. Fred Hampton was drugged by his chief bodyguard, William O'Neill, who was an FBI informant. January 1990, he actually ran across the Eisenhower Expressway and killed himself. Got ran over by some cars. I guess he couldn't live with the guilt. He was in witness protection for a number of years. Even had his name changed and came back to Chicago for whatever reason. He was able to walk around, but he ended up killing himself supposedly back in January 1990. But he actually gave his FBI handler the floor plans to the apartment where Fred Hampton lived. And so the FBI gave it to the state attorney's office, Edward Hannaran. He passed along to the Chicago Police Department, and you had the makings of a state execution. Fixed Fred Hampton's last meal, put a lot of seconal in his food to make him drowsy. I guess put some seconal in his Kool-Aid, whatever. And he was like, when the police came into the apartment, Fred Hampton was knocked out. They said they put enough seconal in his food to knock out a horse. So Fred Hampton was not even able to defend himself or respond in a way that he probably could have survived that encounter. He was too drowsy. So the police was just shooting. It was a shoot-in. They said it was a shootout initially through the press. The state attorney lied like there was a shootout with the Panthers. Actually, out there was a shoot-in because the only shot that was fired came from Mark Clark after he was hit in the chest. It was a reaction shot after being hit in the chest, and the police started firing. But they're not only firing just to be firing into the apartment, but they was aiming towards the bedroom where Fred Hampton and his fiance, who was pregnant with his namesake, was sleeping at. So luckily, blessedly, she was able to survive, and they escorted her out of the apartment, out the bedroom, because there was some Panthers. There were other people in the apartment too that got injured. I mean, but the only people that got killed, amazingly, was just Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. But Fred Hampton actually initially could have survived the encounter. But what happened was, from my understanding, it was a black police officer. I want to say his name was Donald Gloves Davis or something like that. I think he passed not too long ago. He actually delivered the kill shot to Fred Hampton. I think he shot him in the head because they thought, okay, he's gonna make it, and no, he ain't gonna make it no more. So they just dragged his body out. It was like a trophy kill, like Che Guevara. Just had the man laid out on the apartment floor, all bloodied up in his drawers. And then you can see the picture of them. He had Fred Hampton in the body bag, carrying him out the apartment, the West Side apartment on Monroe. They smiling. Like, look what we did. They knew what they did, but they didn't know what they really did. You understand what I'm saying? Because they were so arrogant. First of all, they moved the body. They contaminated the crime scene, right? They already killed the men, but they moved the bodies out. They moved. I heard my understanding. They moved it to a different location in the apartment building, and they moved it out. The bodies out. The coroner was not allowed to do their business. We look at these assassinations, whether it be King, Malcolm, JFK, they always contaminating the evidence. They always contaminate the crime scene. Even with OJ, they contaminate the crime scene. But y'all still think OJ did that. Some of y'all. But what happened was they did not secure the apartment. So the Panthers came back in. Jeffrey Haas, I talked to him, one of Fred Hampton's lawyers. They started the People's Law Office in honor of Fred Hampton. They actually represented the family in one of the longest civil suits in American history. And the family was initially awarded, back in 1982, the families of Mark Clark, Fred Hampton, and the survivors, I believe they was awarded around $1.85 million because it came out in court that the government was complicit in the killing of Fred Hampton. He was assassinated. It was a state assassination on the level of a JFK and Dr. King. And so they had to pay it out because the paper trail was there. So, no, but the family had to fight like 11, 12, 13 years in court just to get the little money. And we lost so much. Like the loss of Fred Hampton, Mark Clark is way more than $1.85 million. It's quite evident. Chicago would be different right now if somebody like a Fred Hampton was able to live and do the work in his prime. He was just 21 years old when they took him out. But they did not secure the apartment. So the Black Panthers had enough sense, presence of mind to go there, bring in camera crews, let the community come in to look at the apartments for themselves. It was all Swiss cheesed up. Like I said, only one shot came from the Panther. That was Mark Clark from a reaction. And he got shot in the chest. So one elder said it was like, looking at a northern lynching, the horrors of lynching. Well, I don't understand. I'll tell my Fred Hampton mom. His mom used to babysit Emmett Till. Fred Hampton's mom used to babysit Emmett Till. Emmett Till got killed, when he was 14 years old down south. His folks from Mississippi. Fred Hampton people from Louisiana. He's buried in the family plot down there. And guess what they doing to Fred Hampton's tombstone? For years, they be shooting at it. Got all these bullet holes, pockmarked with bullet holes for people shooting at his tombstone. It's like with John Brown, they vandalizing his statue, the first statue in honor of him in the country. Why do they fear these dead people? Why do you fear the dead? I tell people, I remember I told my coworkers, I said, hey, I like to eat lunches in the cemetery. They looked at me like I was crazy. I said, it's beautiful. I like to go to historic cemeteries and eat lunch and to think and meditate. Because the dead don't give you no problems. They don't complain. If you smack, you eat with your mouth open. If you burp, if you fart, if you play out of tune, they don't complain. It's the living you should worry about if you're going to do any type of worrying. But people worry about dead things. It's funny how, why are you shooting at Fred Hampton's tombstone? The man been dead for 50 years, and y'all destroying the man's tombstone. Why are y'all destroying John Brown's statue? John Brown's body is a muttering in the grave. He's been dead for 160 years. What is it about these people that these people feel? It's not the people. It's like what Medgar Evers said, who was killed at 37. He said, You could kill a man, but you can't kill an idea. Fred Hampton said you could kill a revolutionary, but you can't kill a revolution. I bet you can't kill the revolutionary spirit. Energy don't die, it just transfers. That's the fear. The FBI, the government knew who Fred Hampton was when he was 14, 15 years old. They were watching Fred Hampton since he was 14 and 15, only lived to be 21 because they knew his potential. They talk about, read that Black Messiah Index or memo, whatever, that J. Edgar Hoover sent out. They all talking about Fred Hampton. Dr. King and Company, the SCLC knew the greatness of Fred Hampton. Roy Wilkins of the NAACP knew the greatness of Fred Hampton. He was older cats, but he was able to connect with those guys. It was Fred Hampton that came up with the phrase Rainbow Coalition. He was about uniting the street gangs. He called them tribes. He was trying to, empower and educate people like Jeff Fort, like the students of Democratic Society, like the Young Lords. He was trying to, unite them in a coalition. He was doing political education. The Black Panther Party, under his direction in Detroit, not Detroit, but in Chicago, Illinois, they were doing sickle cell testing. They knew that you should feed kids before school so they could focus better on their studies, so they'd be more alert and more focused. Because how can you focus when your stomach is rumbling? So they came up with the free breakfast program that was incorporated into the schools, right? To the public schools. They came up with sickle cell testing, free healthcare clinics. Well, why they doing healthcare right now, right? The Panthers was doing that. And this guy was just in his early 20s. You can even find clips. Y'all talking about missing black people and the organ harvest. And Fred Hampton was talking about that back in the 60s. He talked about the hospitals, how they used to kill black folks and take their organs. It's on video, it's on film. Yeah. Oh, when they killed the people they killed the right ones, baby. Uh-huh. They got the right ones. You know what I'm saying? Because Bobby Rush survived. Bobby Rush was Fred Hampton's second in command, from my understanding. Bobby Rush is a congressman now. And he said that they came for him the next morning. On December 5th, they came into his apartment looking to kill him. Because they thought that he was going to be there in the apartment with Fred Hampton that night. But he left for whatever reason. He had to leave. He left, and thank God that he did leave. I think he turned himself. I think he went to Jesse Jackson, and Jesse Jackson helped, mediate and facilitate the terms of surrender for Bobby Rush to the authorities. So that would save his life. But Fred Hampton came up with the term Rainbow Coalition that Jesse Jackson ran with. And Jesse Jackson, I believe he was one of the eulogists at Fred Hampton's funeral, which attracted over 5,000 people. You had the Southern Christian Leadership Conference properly represented by Ralph Abernathy. I'm trying to tell you out of respect that the folks had for Fred Hampton. It was not just the young people, it was the older people, it was people from all types of walks of life, because Fred Hampton was a decent human being. He was a decent man. He had a powerful personal moral compass. Listen to his speeches. It's a blessing we got footage of Fred Hampton. We know he existed. We look at the people he touched. We look at his fiance. We look at his son. We look at all these people that he touched with his spirit. People that not yet been born. People just born are going to learn about this man, because as long as we talk about the ancestors, if we tell their stories, the ancestors will always get the glory. If we don't tell their stories, the righteous ancestors get no glory. So as long as I live, the things I'm doing, documenting this stuff, I'm going to sing the praises of Fred Hampton. I'm going to sing the praises of John Brown and so many other unsung freedom fighters. Because I was here. I've been doing it for 20 years and I ain't going to stop doing it. This is who I am. I've been consistent. And a lot of times, people take that for granted, but I'm not going to take it for granted no more. Dick Gregory, he talked bad about some of the Panthers, but he always had the highest regard for Fred Hampton. He respected because he knew he was the real deal. And it's a shame that our government would see this guy as an internal threat to security. They saw the Black Panthers as an eternal threat to security. The Black Panthers, like what Kathleen Cleaver said in a documentary, the FBI War on Black America. Check that out. You got Amazon Prime. It might be on YouTube. But check out the FBI War on Black America, which was done almost 30 years ago. They interviewed Fred Hampton's lawyers, Jeffrey Haas. I interviewed Jeffrey Haas. It's available on We All Be TV. I interviewed Fred Hampton's brother. But they talk about, Geronimo Pratt, decorated Vietnam War vet and one of the top leaders of the Black Panther Party out on the West Coast. He was interviewed in jail. That's Tupac's godfather. See, I listen to Tupac every day. I know y'all talk about who's the GOAT and all this stuff. It's something about Tupac. And what I love about Tupac, is that, that background story of his connections to the struggle, the fact that his godfather is Jerome Pratt, the fact that his mom is Afeni Shakur, the fact that his aunt is Ashada Shakur, the fact that his stepfather is Mutulu Shakur. This is who we come out of. The fact that he knew about Fred Hampton growing up. You know what I'm saying? He knew about Fred Hampton. So he knew, well, Pac is so complex, but the music is powerful, it's timeless. But Pac knew the commitment, the sacrifices, and whatnot. He knew Pac was killed at 25. Fred Hampton was killed at 21. Imagine if these guys were able to live to be 50 or even be 30 years old or 35 or 40. You know, how much difference that would have made. You understand what I'm saying? So, yeah, Edward Hannaran, that's his name, the state attorney, he's no longer with us as well. He passed on, I want to say about in the last 10 years or so. So the guy who actually shot Fred Hampton in the head, he's no longer here. I believe Donald Gloves Davis. Y'all correct me in Chicago if I got the right name. The black officer who shot Fred Hampton in the head, that killed him, the kill shot. Um, so many folks, Fred Hampton's, families, mother, father, brother, sister, they all passed. Brother, sister, and mom passed like within the last 5 or 6 years, 5 years. So been very rapid, time going by so fast. But yeah, Fred Hampton is a hero of mine. And if I have children, they're gonna know about the greatness of Fred Hampton and the sacrifices our people made. And by doing these type of videos and lectures and whatever, I'm doing my part. So I hope y'all get interested and find out more about Fred Hampton Senior as well as John Brown, and reach out to Fred Hampton Jr. He's carrying the legacy of his father. He reminds me of his father. He got the speaking patterns of his father. He talks fast. I talk fast. He's a brilliant mind, and helped them save Fred Hampton's childhood home. They're trying to save Cap Calloway childhood home. And one of the most visited homes in the whole country, in the world, is Graceland in Memphis. Why is it takes so much for us to save our heroes and sheroes home? Well, white folks like, oh, I'm gonna save Graceland. Graceland's this. Graceland get more visitors than the White House. So that's what I heard. Y'all can say, well, Brother Ron, this is not right. I don't care. What I'm trying to tell you is the reason why it's such a struggle for us to commemorate, to preserve our people and our legacy, because a lot of us don't know. When I do the work I do, the work that y'all don't really view, what I'm saying? Like the work, like y'all like Dick Gregory stuff, Judge Joe Brown, y'all like, controversial stuff. But the preservation I do in terms of cultural awareness and preservation and honoring the ancestors, that goes unsung. It really does. It really does go unsung. It's a labor of love. But the thing about it is the reason why we don't have a great understanding of who we are as individuals, because we don't understand us as collective from the past. And so it's hard to get people like, well, who's Jimmy Lunsford? Who is this person? I mean, you're a musician, you're a music educator. You don't know who these people are? No, I don't know who these people are. But it's gonna feel like I know. There's some other people I'm talking about, like Alfred Skip Robinson, who was a freedom fighter like nobody's business. How can a guy who back in the 70s and the 80s had a organization that had over 100,000 members, who got in the shootouts with the Klan down in Tupelo, Mississippi, this back in the 70s, 80s, you know what I'm saying, was speaking all over the country, getting all types of awards, how is he forgotten about? How does that talk to civil rights historians and freedom historians, black power historians? They don't know who this guy is. And also he was a Muslim. He ran the Holly Springs temple for the Nation of Islam. And I believe Louis Farrakhan did his eulogy. And he died under questionable circumstances back in the 80s. They say he fell asleep and ran into a semi or into a Mack truck, supposedly. And he died. He was airlifted to the Med in Memphis and died. This happened on Highway 78. I want to say back in December of either 86 or 87. Y'all can look that up. But I got a speech that he did at UMass back in the 70s on We All BTE, Alfred Skip Robinson. He was a prophet. He actually got into the movement because he wanted to find out who killed Emmett Till and killed them. He actually was doing undercover work up in the area where Emmett Till was killed, and his plan was to kill the people that killed Emmett Till. But he ended up doing some other stuff. He ran for sheriff of Marshall County, but he got in shootouts with the Klan. Guy was about his business, man. He was putting in work, but also he was about black empowerment. But listen to that speech he did at UMass that got on We All BTV. Alfred Skip Robinson. He was a prophet. All the stuff he talked about in that speech, it came to pass. All the stuff that we're going through right now, it's happening. He talked about in that speech. It's a black dude from Mississippi, black guy from Mississippi. So, and he's not even talked about. And also, I interviewed a brother who was a comrade of his back in the day. That's on We All Be TV too. And shout outs to his son and his wonderful family. We love you madly. But yeah, with Fred Hampton, I got a lot of videos out there with Fred. Like I said, I interviewed this lawyer, his brother. I have the commentary on Fred Hampton over the years. I have written articles about Fred Hampton over the years. I'll probably put that information in the description box below this video. And y'all think about supporting We All Be, man, because we all be in it to win it. If you have got value, if you have gotten insight, inspiration, if this has helped you, 'cause I get calls and emails and all types of people tell me, well, we use what you do, Brother Ron, as part of our curriculum in our schools or at home, or you really have helped me to create a blueprint for me to have a better knowledge of self and understanding. You gave us a branch on the tree to start from, whatever. I appreciate that. So this is a season of giving. As I give to you, I will hope that you invest in the We All Be info movement, because knowledge is the currency of the universe. And one thing that is interesting with our people, a lot of people think, well, knowledge is free. Where is knowledge free at? You people in debt to these so-called colleges. Knowledge ain't free. What I mean by ain't being free is not just about money as well either. It's more about taking time to do research, to learn things, then being willing to share that stuff. Because on me, um, once I know something, I want other people to know it as well. But at the same time, it be a lot of stuff I learned. It's like it's a burden to me. It feel like it's a burden. I mean, it's a blessing too. Don't get it wrong, but it feel like hell, God, you put this all on me, and I gotta find a way to filter all this stuff out to get out to the people, and I don't know how to do all that. It's frustrating sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I'm self sabotaging myself. But with that said, I answered the call. I remember Dick Gregory told me before he died. He said, "Ron, we soldiers. We soldiers. Um, If you can't stand the battle, get the hell out the war. If you can't do the battle, get the hell out. We soldiers, we universal soldiers." He said sometimes the universal God doesn't leave fingerprints, but this is what I say. The universal God always leaves the evidence. And this is the evidence. And it's quite evident that there's a need for this type of stuff, because this stuff is not getting in the schools. They don't teach about John Brown, let alone Fred Hampton in the schools. You don't learn about who you are in school. You learn how to navigate the system. You learn how to do reading, writing, and arithmetic in school. You supposed to learn knowledge of self at home, but what have you got no home? A lot of these kids are homeless. They not when they go, get out of school, they stay around school. I see a lot of kids be staying around the school. They got no homes to go to. Or they act out in school because they got to be the grown person at home because their parents are absentee parents, for whatever reason. Maybe they are strung out on drugs or they doing all these jobs, and they got to be the responsible one. So so much stuff going on with our people. So if your parents and the people that are your guardians don't have no knowledge of self, you ain't gonna have no knowledge of self. I was just blessed that I grew up in a household that knowledge and education was valued. Like a lot of Black history stuff I got in elementary, not because they were teaching that in elementary, but because my grandma knew the value of an encyclopedia set. And she had a World Book Black History Encyclopedia, special edition from the 70s. And when I was in elementary, I would just take that big book somewhere and sit somewhere in the house and just go through it. So before I left elementary, I knew who Burt Williams was. Burt Williams, the great comedic genius. Before Eddie Murphy and all them guys, he was the great one. Before everybody, he set the table for everybody. I knew about the Fort Pillow Massacre before I started getting involved with my mom, Sister Callie Hurd, and we raised money from the community to put the historic marker in front of the Memphis National Cemetery where the ancestors' remains are buried. We did that as a people, doing ceremonies to honor them every year, with military honors and everything else. This is stuff that I do that is unsung. It's not seen a lot. It's not celebrated, and it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? I see the analytics on my video, the stuff that y'all like. It's fine. I interviewed Dr. Randy Short. I can interview Judge Joe Brown. I do a lot of stuff with Dick Gregory. I got a lot of stuff from Dick Gregory I haven't put out. I don't know when I'm gonna put it out, or if I will put it out. But I need the support, because a lot of times I notice that when you do this type of work, people try to stop you. See, COINTELPRO is still going on. COINTELPRO is still going on. People say, "Well, bro, I can't find your videos, this and that." don't see this, or they demonetized this video for whatever reason. But yeah, I see people making all types of crazy videos and getting all types of ads run on it. It is what it is. But I'm in it to win it. I'm in it for the long run. The marathon continues. Support the movement by any means you can. Buy Art of His Art, r2c2h2.com. You can wear Art of His Art. Go to our Teespring channel. Got the link down there below. The description box, the gallery of the t-shirts, PayPal, Google Pay, r2c2h2 at gmail.com. Also, Cash App is $ r2c2h2. And yeah, just the names I dropped, I want y'all to research these people. The people that I gave, the John Browns, Fred Hamptons, Walter Reuther's, the Huey Longs, the Jimmy Hoffers. Get your own understanding of these people and their actual legacies. In 2020, it's going to be a magical year. Stay focused, stay relevant, but always at all times be you. In the words of Duke Ellington, we love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing. Peace. One love. Yeah, I just want to add as well. Reese Taylor rape incident happened September 3rd, 1944. So I'm making sure. September 3rd, 1944. Also in Western University, the HBCU, they had the campaign to help raise money for the statue for John Brown. They had some of the best music programs in the country. It was like renowned for its music school. It was nationally renowned. A lot of great alums came out of that illustrious music program. One person I like to talk about in particular was Eva Jesse. She was from Kansas, almost lived to be 100 years old, but she had her own choir. Her choir performed at the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. That's 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom that gave us Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech. She also worked with the great George Gershwin, who was a fan definitely of black music and black music heroes. His hero growing up was James Reese Europe. Yeah, the Lieutenant James Reese Europe, the creator of the Harlem Hellfighters Jazz Band, war hero and all that stuff, right? So she worked with him on his Porgy and Bess production. Also, she was the music director for the 1929 movie Hallelujah, the first all-black cast Hollywood-produced movie, Hallelujah, that was shot where? In Memphis, Tennessee. So that's the caliber of students and people coming out of Western University, which is now defunct since 1943, which is unfortunate. But like I said, they were responsible for giving us the first statue for John Brown in America. And although the campus buildings are gone, that statue stands as a testament to the greatness of black people. When we get behind something, when we unify, when we focus on a goal, we shall overcome.
Hey, everybody, this is Brother Ron. I am asking you all to do me a big favor. Think about supporting the We All Be movement. Your donation is tax deductible. The We All Be Group Incorporated is a recognized 501c3. And I'm just asking you all because I want to keep on bringing y'all quality work through the way that I know how to do best. And I'm going to sing my praises and toot my horn. A lot of y'all were not hip to Dick Gregory until Brother Ron brought him on the We All Be platform, until that jingle review we did. Y'all seen another side of Judge Joe Brown, and Judge Joe Brown's message has been amplified. But it was We All Be that brought Judge Joe Brown to y'all back in 2014. And so many others. And we covered so many things. So help us out so we can help you all. Peace.